So we can create that distance and noticing, and you see it more clearly when you share with someone. Absolutely. And that's because we also need a mirror, and it's the co-regulation in the nervous system and all of that, absolutely, that you both spoke about. Yeah, I saw a hand.
I think it made a difference that you had talked about shame and normalizing it. So when I shared it with her, it seemed like it's okay to share shame. So I think talking about it in general made it one step easier to share with the other person.
Yeah.
And her listening or the safe space that she created made me share probably even more in deeper.
Oh, I'm happy. I'm happy about that. And that's a very important point, because this shame protector, the critic that comes and that says, shut up, it many times, about what you said, needs additional to individual therapy. It would need a group setting. This is the best way to work with the shame, because sometimes I cannot share, but through somebody else's experience. That's why Alcoholics Anonymous and all the support groups are working so well, because I hear and I see my experience reflected in someone else. And then I get mirrored, and then I'm not the only one, and I don't have this sense of lack of belonging. You know, Mother Teresa said, it's a beautiful quote, that the biggest illness of modern days is not leprosy or illness, disease, it's the lack of sense of belonging. And that produces all our disease of the mind, of the body, of the spirit. So in this group setting, about what you said, it was the fact that one person shared something, and that gave the courage, okay, it's okay then, it's safe then, and we need that. So be aware, that's also when I have clients that are very much in their shame state, sometimes I invite maybe them to look for a support group, or there is something I was sharing yesterday that I've done with some clients. It came, but it worked. I had some clients that were coming one after the other on my couch saying the same story, and the story of shame and the story of isolation, and saying, I'm the only one, there's no one like me practically, I'm horrible, I'm a horrible person because of these things. And the one before was saying the same, and the one after was saying the same. And it was breaking my heart that I couldn't put these people, that there was confidentiality, right? And that I couldn't say, but there was George before that is exactly like you, and you could be friends, and the other one after you. And at a point, my supervisor, I was sharing about this difficulty, because really it was a problem for me in the space, and it brought a lot of pain for me also to see that. And my supervisor came with an idea. He said, but why don't you ask them if they want to meet? This might be a bit outside of the box, but it's asking permission. So because I'm a group facilitator and that's what I like, I asked some of them, so how would it be? Would you like to be part of a group? And I asked some of these that were having these isolating experiences, and they loved it. And they loved it. And they meet once a month. They're a group of about 6, 7. And they're connecting and they're talking about that. And I come sometimes, but sometimes not. They're just connecting by themselves. So I'm just offering that. It's very, again, outside of the box, but it can be a way of connecting people and of working with that shame, because if we work just one-on-one, there's still an idea there. Yeah, you're my therapist, you have to say this. You know? Yeah. I saw earlier and I started talking.
I was just recognizing what a trap it is.
Yeah.
What a continuous trap it is to
Yeah.
stay inside it. That still I have to feel invisible
Yeah.
and stay in this, and I don't need to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And building the capacity in my body to get myself out of that state.
Right.
Yeah.
Such a beautiful point about building that capacity, absolutely. And that's how we build the capacity, through practice, through being with it. I'm going to share, I'm going to be with that pounding heart, and with the flash in my eye, I feel horrible and I cannot look at you today, tomorrow, and then we build up that capacity. And then we don't identify, and we can be with it instead of crashed by it. Yeah, yeah. Yes?
Hello.
Yeah.
It was easier for me to listen, but when it came to my sharing, I was first thinking, what story of shame should I tell the person that they can hear it? that I was thinking कि इनको क्या बताऊं कि इनके ऊपर ज़्यादा ना वो है ना ऐसे. And then second, I did not share in my childhood also. When it happened, there was no one to share, so I did not share. So then, even now, it was difficult for me to share, and I always get this suggestion from my friend that why don't you tell us about it, because maybe in childhood also when it happened nobody was there to listen. And now if people are there, I think that I can deal it maybe from humor and all of that. So I still believe that I am nobody gets the nobody has done this apart from me, and and if I will share it with them, they will think I'm very bad. So it is better not to tell them only, And it's a very strong belief that I have.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I still, and I also feel that it's what you said, double standard and a disservice to other person also. That they shared with me, but I have so much of beliefs and all that. I am not able to share. So I think it's difficult to build up that trust, and so it's very difficult to talk about shame. Share the shame.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And absolutely, that's absolutely exactly, that's the idea, and that's why we did the exercise earlier with the core beliefs. You saw how many of us can, I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that. Everybody, it's such a, who does not know shame? And shame tells us, I am the only one that this and that, right? And then we see it in the other and in the other. Yeah.
Very quickly, when I was sharing, I could voice what I was feeling, right? I could tell her. And then she asked me, but what are you feeling? And I had to immediately stop and say, oh, okay, I am actually feeling. So it was very easy for me not to be in my body and just explain it. And then when she asked me, are you feeling something? That's my cognizance that, okay, maybe I am feeling something.
And how was that when you realized
I was
that
like,
you...
I want to shake it off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's, you see, I want to shake it off. That's exactly it. Thank you for that. And that comes, it's the dissociation, right? From the very hard bodily experience that feels unsafe. So that I perceive it's unsafe. So I can tell the story. I'm in my mind, very cognitive, but I don't feel the body. And when I feel the body, I want to shake it off. And now if we have a person that feels it and cannot shake it off, what's a logical thing to do? And that's when the escape comes logical. Yes.
I feel shame is a wasted emotion to carry with in a future. So don't create your story to exaggerate that shame. Share it with a person whom you are comfortable with, or use catharsis, and keep that shame at the moment as early as possible, and go ahead and be in the present.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Absolutely. How important to keep to catch the shame as early as possible. As I was saying about that upside pyramid, it loves to create this whole story, right? And it will create another and another, and it's this snowball that is going. So if I can catch it early and remember that it's a common human experience. Thank you. Okay, as I promised, this will have a second part, this exercise that touches a little bit upon what some of you were mentioning, but I want to go before that a little bit back, because I was saying about the suicide survivors. Also, I want to say, because I saw a lot of people, and I know there's a lot of information here, and I saw you also making pictures. This is a presentation done specifically for this, and you can have it, right? So you can also take more time and look over it. I'm not going to stay longer here, but because it explains itself, but just what to be aware of in suicide survivors is that there are multiple layers of shame. So we might unravel one, but there might be other. And if we look at it, it can be the base. We can think of it as the first original pain, right? That led them to having the suicidal ideation or attempt. So it's the individual pain. Why did that happen? It was already a sign of disconnection, right? It grew in silence and in disconnection. Now, then they had the attempt. After they had the attempt, it's a really useful question for those of you who were in the workshop yesterday when I presented that intake form, when we asked them, so how do you feel around your attempt? And people might have, a lot of people come with the story, I couldn't even get this right. I couldn't even get this right. So there we have, so first one is the shame that brought me to suicide, then I didn't even get that. Another story, another layer of worthlessness. Then it could be a lot of shame around what I did to my family or to my people, and there is some guilt in there, but there is also shame. I'm a bad person, I'm selfish, I'm self-centered, right? It can be also that story. So we really want to inquire into the specifics of that person's, that survivor's suicidality. As I was saying yesterday, suicidality is as unique as a fingerprint. For each person, we want to understand their own story and their own drivers. What leads me there? We have the guilt. We want to see the guilt. Where is it really oriented towards? It can be, as I was saying, the religious context, the family, the friends. And it's really important to also be aware that there is this part of people that are overworking again in this. So years ago and it can happen that I find myself also sometimes, as I shared, that I want to make my life worth living. There is a sort of survivor guilt and I saw it a lot reflected in a lot of people. Why did I deserve to be the one that didn't die? Why do other people die? Especially when you get to, as a survivor, when you get to actually appreciate your life, when there are moments of joy, after living with a lot of suicidal ideation and attempts, there can come some guilt. Why do I get to still be here for my kids and other people didn't get a second chance? So in my beginning in this work, I will absolutely confess that I was overworking out of that, because I was wanting to make my life worthwhile and to save the next one and to save the next one, and I was taking calls in the night and I was sleeping 3 hours at every time. Canadian, US clients out of my time zone, call me, I'm there, call me, I'm there for everyone. And it was coming out of shame and it was killing me ultimately in the same way, because I burnt out completely, I had depression, I had back to, so it's the same cycle. So to be aware of also of that, that's again very specific. And how do we also grow out of that? I wanted to also offer this. There are if you're familiar with the work of Chris Germer and Kristen Neff, and here you will have in the references also the self-compassion scale, and this is so interesting for us also to apply to ourselves. You will find it as a link in the references, because there you can see the areas in your life where you have it, where it's easier for you to be more self-compassionate and where you're not self-compassionate at all. You can be, for example, as a parent, I don't have compassion when I yell to my kids, for example. But as a professional, maybe I can have compassion, or so and so, right? Different. And it's really useful to see in ourselves, but also in our clients, where do you struggle with having self-compassion? And you see, he names them here, the 3 healing paradoxes of shame. That it's around what we were saying this time. Shame feels blameworthy, but it's an innocent emotion. It came to save us. It's the quiet little hero. It's not an enemy. It doesn't want to kill us. Then shame feels isolating, but it's a universal emotion, what we just explored. And shame feels permanent, but it's a temporary emotion. The same, it will pass. It's not permanent, but it can feel permanent, right? And Kristen Neff is offering these 3 components of self-compassion, and they're opposites, and they're all features of shame, right? The fundamental elements of self-compassion, they're self-kindness, and what is there as the opposite is self-criticism. I would never criticize someone with the highest standards, but me, yes, I cannot fail this at all. But I'm compassionate and kind towards another person. That's shame. common humanity versus isolation, and mindfulness, what we were saying, versus over-identification. So not being in the shame, but being with the shame. These are really good practical tools to journey into if you don't know them exactly. They can be very helpful I found them very helpful in my process, and then also working with the clients in how do we build that self-compassion. And one last thing here I want to also say about self-compassion, to be aware that for trauma survivors, sometimes self-compassion feels very dangerous. And we might have the agenda as a therapist to really build that self-compassion for that person. But as we were exploring earlier, if I would have had self-compassion and stood up in front of the abuse or the beating, I would have had it way worse. So then self-compassion is dangerous. And they will not be able to connect to that. It's a very slow titration of that. For people coming from abuse environments, from severe trauma, it feels very threatening, and it will feel disgusting. This is what people say. I'm disgusted by, let's have self-compassion, it's disgusting. Why? In the same way that I was talking earlier. It's dangerous, I don't want that. And I know myself as a practitioner, as a therapist, I had this agenda. I want them to see themselves as who they are and the resilience and what these beautiful traits inside of them, and it was hurting me, their self-criticism. Of course, in all that time, I wasn't seeing that I'm doing the same to myself. Because also self-compassion to me felt dangerous. If I have self-compassion, maybe I stop from this work and my life is not worth living, for example. And I will put boundaries. And for them, it was the same. And when they connect physically, that self-compassion can come in, then we can have a collapse of the nervous system and a collapse of the somatic based reality of that person, and it can be a risk factor for escalating a suicidal crisis. Just be aware of that, to be very aware of the background of complex trauma of the person. If it has been abusive, physical, then people tolerate hard to be in their body. They don't really tolerate, they will dissociate. And if we bring in that self-compassion, it's really, really dangerous. So we want to do it very slowly, and asking all the time, how is this for you if you can connect with this a little bit? And being in connection with them. When we reflect something good to them, we want as therapists to say, oh, you are this and that, and do you see your victory? And we might see our clients shrink when we say that. And it's not because they don't want to believe it, it's because it feels as a mortal threat. So we don't want to bypass that because I have an agenda. Okay, and lastly, just to finish also on a positive note, how do we reframe this? And also Chris Germer is talking about the common humanity and the wish to be loved that is at the core of any shameful deed, quote. And it's actually the felt response when we don't get met in the way we had hoped. Someone asked me earlier, and before we do shortly this exercise, someone asked me in the break and shared a story where they had a slingshot and took the slingshot at their sister, and they hurt the sister. And they were asking, is this shame or guilt? So I asked, okay, would you like to not have done that? Yes, that's guilt. It's a corrective behavior. And I asked, the next question can be, and what do you make it mean of yourself? Because it's interesting that after all these years, the memory is still there. Right? And that's what comes up. So what did you make it mean of yourself that you took the slingshot and hurt your sister? And the answer came very naturally, well, I was a mean kid. I was a mean kid. Yeah. So then I asked, okay, so before doing that, you planned to hurt your sister when you did that? Did you plan to hurt your sister? No, of course not. So how come you were a mean kid? And not a kid that did a mistake? And I'm sure that if I would have followed up and asked, okay, so if you have a kid that does that, would you say it's a mean kid? But that's our belief that gets carried there, right? And this is where I would go further and ask, so what was your need when you did that? I wanted, maybe, I'm just assuming, but maybe, attention, attention. Or maybe I wanted to play, or I wanted attention, Is it wrong to want attention? We die without attention. We die. We don't cry, we don't get fed without attention. So that's when shame comes. It's that felt response when we don't get our basic need met, and then we make it mean something about ourselves. So we can identify also in ourselves or in our clients the humanity in seeking to belong and care and be cared of. And so we want to see this universal human need that we had behind our action. So now I would ask you if you'd like to come back in those pairs, just 2-3 minutes, it's very fast. If you can identify exactly what it says here, I wanted to. Can you identify the need or longing or find the common humanity in your shame story? What were you looking for? What was your wish to be loved there? What did you need when making space for that instead of the story of shame? How does that land in your body? Just shortly, if you can share, just to have that connection. I wished this, and hold together. See how that feels. Yeah, we don't have time, so slowly. Let's just come back. And notice a little bit before we share, maybe, just notice how your body feels now. If there is any difference, maybe there isn't, we don't, but just notice if there's the smallest difference from how it felt earlier in sharing the shame. Is there? And let me know if for anyone there's a difference. Yeah.
I don't know if I'm supposed to share or not, and it's not even going to add anything, but I just want to share about even the activity before and even this one right now, it really did make me feel very comfortable with my shame. Now, even right now as I'm speaking, I feel a lot of shame, but now I've given it all. I feel a lot of phone here. I feel like I don't care if you judge me or not. I'm just very, very happy to be here. Thank you so much for that. It has really helped me guide my life a little.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. And you see this warmth towards the shame. That's why I like to keep this shame workshop, because it's like a shame party by the end. Yeah.
When I have not shared, I had teary eyes. I could feel shame here in my tears. And when I shared in this exercise, I feel a heart connection, like a ray coming out.
Yeah, the heart connection. Yeah, I understand. It's a common, it's universal language. Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. And while we hear this in a second, also really hear these experiences and these connections and let them be a resource for you. Let them land in your body. Maybe they're languaged differently than we would say, but see that it's the same experience. As those negative beliefs, they're the same. Actually, the shame is the most connecting emotion. We all know it. We all have the same thoughts, actually. And when we switch it to the wish to be loved, let's see. Yeah.
Even if I did not share any shame or any experience with anyone, just the fact that it made me think to myself, oh, do I have an experience? Or just the fact that it came to my mind, right? So I was confronted with it, and it somehow was now the truth, it was the reality. And even if not sharing it, it just felt better to think about it or even consider talking about it, or like even now speaking in general. It's like the warmth, we can like feel it. Even if someone else is sharing, you can just somehow feel the connection, and I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
I had a question also.
Yeah, just here. Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I had a question. the shame arises from the wish to feel love. Now I want to feel love, so I had say cigarette or alcohol, and then I feel shame, and then I feel guilty about it. And the cycle, I want to feel love, but
Yeah.
then I'm doing say alcohol.
Yeah.
Then I'm coming into it.
Yeah.
Shame is it's eating me or it wants to.
Yeah. Thank you for offering that, and that's the source of all addictions, actually. It's the wish to be loved that is not met or fulfilled in another way. Can we validate that basic human need? If I would tell you, look, I really wanted to be loved, so, I don't know, I smoked a cigarette, I drank, I went to someone and pulled their sleeve, would you say you're a shameful person? No. So what do you make it mean of yourself? That you didn't find any other way to feel loved, so you had some alcohol. What does that say about you? I am how? Less than others. Yeah, it's a belief. I am less than others. Is this belief familiar to you?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's not about the alcohol. It's a familiar belief that you've carried with you. And it will use, as I said, the smallest thing. I needed to take some alcohol. But how would it be if you switched to the compassion? Oh, wow. Okay, I didn't find in that moment any other way to feel loved than to get this disinhibitor where I can connect to people.
I did not do it willingly.
Yeah, of course.
I have this belief that I am inferior. Is my belief.
Yes.
So even if I pick up on addiction, my addiction would be not talked about so much.
Yeah.
Say sugar.
Yeah.
It is not considered.
Yeah, I understand. And all addictions are very much based on this belief I am inferior. So we are trying to self-medicate with our addictions. Even with suicidality, it's a self-medicating technique of bringing some relief, of bringing some, also some balance in the neurotransmitters, as I was saying yesterday about the client with the funeral fantasy. Yeah. We don't have time. There are 2 more minutes, and I want to listen just to, and we talk after. Yeah, there was a hand.
I wanted to say that after share, like the second, I felt a bit anxious. It's so good that everyone felt warm and all. And since we are talking about addiction, I felt like I need to smoke, I need to go out, I need to smoke.
Yeah.
And since we talked about addiction, I also wanted to talk about how it happens with me. I am addicted to maladaptive daydreaming.
Maladaptive?
Daydreaming.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like a coping mechanism.
Yeah.
I listen to music, I walk in my room continuously until I feel tired enough to go and sleep by listening.
Thank you for sharing that. Can I ask how does it feel now, that anxiety that you were saying about?
My body feels warm.
Okay. So it feels warm. Just allow that warmth. Yeah, because you had the courage to name it. Yeah, okay. Thank you all so much. I would love to interact 3 more hours, really, but the session is over and there will be a bell. Yeah, okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Irina, for this beautiful, insightful, heartwarming session. I'm sure all of us must have got a lot from this. It's like, it's like layers of the cake, I feel. The deeper you go, the subtler you feel. Quite a few topics were touched upon. The differences, subtle differences between shame and guilt, between attachment and authenticity. And really, really grateful, Irina, for all the sharing here today, and also the experiences that all of you shared and all of you participated. Thank you so much on behalf of Connecting Trust. May I request Mridula, our dear volunteer, to please felicitate Irina.
So many felicitations.
Yes. Thank you, Irina. The generosity with which you shared all of this. It has really, really deepened our understanding, and I'm sure in the room.
Thank you for interacting and being so open. Thank you.
Yeah, it has deepened all our interest in this arena, and I'm sure we'll continue with the conversations. So I'll just quickly tell you the agenda now. So there is a tea and coffee served at the back. Please feel free to have it. After this, at 4:45, we gather up in the Bliss Hall, and the sessions would continue there. Okay, the break is short, but make sure you make it refreshing. Okay, see you all soon. Thank you.
Would it be a good, or are people that are still needing a little bit of time? Let me know. I don't want to cut off. Is it okay if we stop here, this exercise? Just to get a feel of it. Maybe you didn't get to finish, everyone. So in this exercise, this is mainly what we were looking at. And how do we work specifically, practically with shame? And I was talking about name it to tame it. And it comes from Dan Siegel, that speaks about the interpersonal neurobiology and about how to actually bring back online the thinking brain or the prefrontal cortex. When we are in shame, when we are in this dorsal collapse, exactly as in the fear or the panic, we don't have access to the prefrontal cortex. What does that mean? That our client that may be suicidal for a while, and we provided them with the best tools possible and the best resources and safety plans, and they are practicing them with us in the office very well, and then they come and say, I just didn't remember anything and I just cut. And they come with shame. And that's why it's a neurobiological reason when they are in that shame state or in a fear state or whatever very strong emotion, they don't have access to the prefrontal cortex, so they do not have access to all their knowledge. We can have manuals, but we don't have access. They have that impaired. It's a fragmentation, right? So how do we bring that back? The simplest tool that both psychotherapy and spirituality actually knows is name it, vocalize it, verbalize it, right? And we know from spiritual traditions and the meditation, this is what it is. We are noticing and we are naming, but if we're naming verbally, I have shame, then I'm out of the shame state. I'm feeling it, but I'm with the shame and not in the shame. That's the big difference. I don't want to do my work with shame, and how can we titrate it, and how can we maybe reframe it and understand it deeper, and what is its somatic experiencing, the beliefs that might show up there. And I'm going to speak a little bit also about suicide survivors, because this is such a category that is not really, it's been spoken a lot in this conference, and I was surprised about that, but in other conferences or in the work with suicide, it's not so much approached as the loss, as it was said about the survivors of loss also, but also really deeply understanding the specific architecture of a suicide survivor. In speaking about the layers of shame and guilt that might be showing up there, that's also not so spoken about. So I will be bringing that also, and hopefully we can connect also. I would very much, my intention would be to not keep it all academic and to really connect from a personal space also. And to do that, I was looking today during the talks, during what I was hearing, and also yesterday, and I was noticing a part of my own shame coming up. And that part was very much about hearing so many people and speakers speaking about the value of the lived experience. And having this keynote speech where it's it's emphasized the importance of having the people with lived experience that can do this work also. And for me, as I shared yesterday in the workshop, for those of you who were there, the point of entry, the place from which I'm coming from in this work is from my lived experience, is from my personal experience. I've been living with suicidal ideation for 20 years, I think, since I was very young. As a result of trauma, and I've had multiple suicide attempts, and including when I was this professional, successful, seen as an academic victory, let's say, probably also because of that, having small kids also, and that my shame and guilt around that were huge, that how could I actually think of leaving them. And I've carried that shame and guilt for many years. I thought in my therapy and in my own healing, and especially in the work with Gabor Mate, that I'm owing so much, and that's why I also try to spread the message as much as possible. I thought that this shame is more metabolized, it's more integrated. And it's very interesting for me to notice it still when it shows up. And it does show up. It does show up in the training that I'm holding, the suicide attention training, which is a big international training for helping professions. And when I show up at the first session, my thought there is of this imposter syndrome, of I am on the other side now and I'm teaching doctors and psychologists, but I'm actually the patient underneath. And it's so constricting and it's so collapsing, and I lose my train of thought and I go silent. And for me, it's extremely healing to also be with that experience. And I've noticed it today also. Hearing this lived experience, I was thinking, that's me, so it's a good thing, actually. And of course I know it's a good thing, but still that part in me, I could see it and I could really welcome it and offer it that compassion that, hey, you're here, the one that believes still that you're broken because you went through this, right? So just acknowledging that those parts are in us still, and I want to also acknowledge that they are in the helping professions, that we are losing a lot of people in the helping professions. Just 2 months ago, a great psychologist from America, from the US, that established some institutes of suicide prevention and campaigns, and a pioneer in research that has taken his own life, actually, died by suicide, and so many professionals that it's not being spoken about, because the shame of a helping profession to be struggling themselves is huge. And the stigma and the isolation and the fact that we don't talk to others because I should be the one that has it all together, right? So also making space for that in our exploration and bringing that into attention, because we're all human. And it's also about these roles, and I will be speaking about roles and identities and behavior and how that instills shame and drives the isolation. So before jumping into the presentation, I'd like to invite you, if you'd like, let's see, and you don't need to participate, it's a very short show of hands, let's say, to open this conversation. If we speak about addictions, because you know I'm coming from very much the lens of Gabor Mate, trauma work, addictions, and so on. And in my work, everything that you will see is very much coming from the idea that the work with addictions and what he brought in the work with addictions is life-saving in the work with suicide. And that's the same way that we work with it, looking not what's wrong, but what's happening to you, why the pain, right? But talking about shame, so we know probably that addictions can look in many different ways. It's not just drugs, right, or alcohol. It can be, we can have so many. An addiction is any behavior that is for coping, but that we cannot stop, regardless of the fact that we know it's harming us, right? So addictions can be to anything, to shopping, to education might be. I know I'm one of them. I'm gathering courses and trainings compulsively, and sometimes not taking care of myself because I can stay two days online and forget to eat because I study something. Any of these, right? There can be so many. So if you recognize any of them in you and your history. Maybe they're still present, maybe you battled some of them in your journey. Would you be comfortable to raise your hand? Whoever struggled in any way in their life with any sort of addiction, smoking, drinking, anything, right? Okay. And noticing this is not about now, you can lower your hand, it's not about now looking at the others, but feeling yourself. How is it for you to raise your hand in this? And to say, yes, I struggled with addictions. Just noticing the somatic feel of it. Is it easy for you to raise your hand? Do we raise the hand a bit like this? Maybe nobody sees me. Maybe I raise it more. Maybe I look around if there's someone else like me, or am I the only one that had the courage to raise their hand? Just see what happens. Is your pulse more intense? Is your breath maybe more superficial, more shallow? And in tuning out with this is a first really micro experience of shame. And then, let's see, who would like, if you feel comfortable, to raise your hand if you ever had any suicidal thoughts in your life. Wow. Okay. And now with this, if you'd like, you can look around. And also noticing and holding space for the emotion that is in the room here. I see some people having that emotion of raising their hand, and thank you for the courage to do that, actually. And thank you also for the ones that didn't feel to raise their hands. Making space for that also. It makes all the sense. But noticing how this felt. Was there any difference from raising our hands for addictions? I'm really curious. Was there any difference in your felt sense in the body? Of course, it was a fast gesture, right? But when you remember it now, yeah, I raised my hand when they said. How fast did you raise your hand? What came up in the emotion? Could you tell? Yeah?
A lump in my throat.
A lump in your throat, yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah?
With addiction, I was judging myself if anybody else is judging me or not.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. So with addictions, he was judging himself, right? With suicide, not. Okay, yeah.
With the addiction question, my hand went up easier. The next question, my body felt heavier and there was more resistance to or praise, acknowledge it.
Yeah. So with the addictions, it went faster because we're a bit more used to that, right? But with the suicide, it was heavier. But look, there was another experience. So that's also so beautiful to see the diverse experiences. Yeah. There was a hand there. Yeah.
I felt reluctant to accept that I went through that.
I didn't hear before accept. Yeah.
I didn't want to accept that moment. I felt reluctant to accept that I went through that emotion.
So you want to accept that. Yeah. So there is, if I say I want to accept, there is still a block.
Yes.
Yeah. There is still a resistance there in accepting. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. You were raising your hand? Yeah.
So I think it was really easy for me to raise my hand because I know all of them here are strangers and no one knows me and I can see them again. But if there were people from my family or friends or college or if I had to see them again, I would probably think twice.
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't be hard for me to raise the hand, but it is much more easier to raise my hand right now.
No, beautiful point. Thank you for bringing that up. Absolutely. Absolutely. How many of us can resonate with that? Yeah, it's the safe space of actually not knowing those persons and not having that fear, maybe, right? We'll connect again. What will they think of me? They will know this about me, right? I will have this mirrored back. But all these experiences are of shame. When I have the lump in the throat, yeah, that's a classical somatic experience of shame. What does the lump want to do? Silence. Silence, right? Don't speak. I don't raise my hand. There's heaviness in my hand, in my body, in my shoulders. That's shame. Shame is a state of collapse of in the nervous system. It's a dorsal collapse. It's in the parasympathetic, so it makes me fall and leave my eyes down and not react in any way, right? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for contributing to this. And this is opening up the, let's see, does it? I have to touch it. Yes. Okay. So I wanted to open after this exercise with this beautiful quote. It's by a spiritual teacher called A.H. Almas that says, and this is something that whenever I see that shame coming up for me or I work with my clients, this is one of the quotes that I'm basing my perspective and offering. Your conflicts, all the difficult things, the problematic situations in your life, and we can connect now while we're here with our own experience, are not chance or haphazard. They are actually yours. They're specifically yours, designed specifically for you by a part of you that loves you more than anything else. So how is that to connect to that in that way? My addictions, my troubles, my shame, my judgment, they're there. The part of you that loves you more than anything else has created roadblocks to lead you to yourself. So the blocks, the resistance, what's happening to me, what is it doing? It's putting, almost like in a Lego, right? It's putting these fences, not here, not here. And I have to bump my head and find the way. You're not going in the right direction unless there is something pricking you on the side, telling you, look here, this way. That part of you loves you so much. Does it? Yeah, maybe like this. That it doesn't want you to lose the chance. It will go to extreme measures to wake you up. So if we think of suicide here, of suicidal distress, and what I was talking about yesterday, about it being this treasure to be explored, this guide that will do, fierce protector, that will do anything that is needed to bring us back into a life that is aligned with who we are, with our purpose and with meaning. It will go to extreme measures to wake you up. It will make you suffer greatly if you don't listen. What else can it do? That is its purpose. And what is this part, if we think of it? How? A loving witness. A loving witness. Beautiful. Beautiful. What else? How can we? What do you feel when you think of this part?
If you don't flow, then things happen like this.
You don't feel.
If you don't flow.
If you don't flow, yeah. So flow, a loving witness. Yeah, this can be called whatever you resonate with. It could be the higher self. It could be your higher intuition. It could be your soul that will create those roadblocks. But it's not to make you suffer, it's to guide you. And if we trust that, if we don't make it a personal flaw that I'm having this problem, that I'm suicidal, I'm battling suicidal ideation, it's not a problem, it's a guide. It's putting those roadblocks, and then I can bring that curiosity that I was talking about yesterday. Okay, here it is coming up. And if the shame will tell me, shut up and don't share, I can look at it and I can share it, as someone was saying earlier about the importance of sharing when we are in a state of shame, of expressing, right? Which is the antidote to suppressing. Shame makes us suppress, push it down. And that leads to depression, right? That's the dynamic. That's what depression means, that I'm pushing down something. So the antidote is expression, but it's really hard to express from a state of shame. But if we look at it this way, okay, I have this roadblock. What is it leading me to? This higher self part, loving witness, is here with me. So, as I was saying, for a suicidal person, any difficulty experienced, and not only suicidality, any pain that is coming from an unmet need, can lead to a conclusion of personal failure or a verdict upon the self as being defective at its core. So, for so many people, actually experiencing suicidal distress, the story might be very similar. I have some unmet needs, which are basic human needs of connection, maybe of being seen, of being heard, of being loved, of being validated. But I deny those needs. So when I deny those needs and I have shame and I push them down, I construct the belief of myself that I am defective. And this is very important, that's why we say it's foundational to reframe this perspective in the work with suicide. Because shame is a dead end. Shame, what it says, it speaks in I am statements. That's how we see, and it will be later on, but I will prefer to speak freely, about the distinction between shame and guilt. They seem to be the same, but they're absolutely not the same. Guilt is goal-directed, right? I might have guilt if I come late to this session and you all are waiting for me. I should feel guilt. Why? Because I need to correct that behavior and to repair towards you. And that's a vital force. It's a life-affirming force. I'm looking in the future and I'm correcting something. And according to studies, actually, guilt is inversely correlated with suicide, whereas shame is highly correlated with suicide. And people mistake these two. And what is the difference is that shame will say, so I came late to this session, shame will say, I am worthless. It's not about the behavior. It's about who I am at my core. So you came in late and it will have this narrative that we're talking about narrative earlier in the panel. The narrative, the story will be you are worthless. So you shouldn't, and then story. But guilt, no. Guilt is about the behavior and I will correct it. So that is a first really practical tool that we can look in ourselves but also in our clients, because a lot of people mistake these. And making space for that correction of behavior, again, that means that that person is looking in front. In the future, and we know that that is essential in the work with suicide, we want to create this future window. In the future, I would like to behave differently. Great. But if I am worthless, I am nothing, I am all these beliefs that we will journey into, then that's a dead end. Where do I go? There is no problem solving in the shame, and I will collapse. And of course, the logical step from that is, why should I even try? I should just take myself out. So that's why it's very important to be able to notice in our clients, in ourselves, and in the people that we work with when the shame state appears, because they might not be able to recognize, oh, I have shame. It's so hard, you saw, even for us we're in our therapeutic journey, let's say, right? And it's so hard to say, I have shame about this. But for a client that comes in, they will not say that, they will not think of that. But if we can see those cues of shame, and we see them in the body, as we looked at a little bit now, and we see them in what they say. I am this, I am worthless, I am broken, I am wrong, I am too much. I am too less, I am not enough. Shame, shame, shame. And that's where we work in distancing that person, and we'll see a little bit more in how do we work with that shame. Because if the person is in the story, shame is a state, right? It's a state of the nervous system and it's a state of the body. But the problem with shame is that from state, it escalates to trait. Right? This is my personality, I am defective, I am weak, I am powerless. And it translates the state into a constant trait that speaks to my identity. This is who I am. And this is what we really want to reframe in the work with suicide, because it's the main driver, as I was saying. And then, of course, from the trait, it has to produce a narrative. So it's state to trait to story. Our mind will need to make a story. Why do I feel shame? And it will use any single thing. The fact that I don't have a pen now. You're stupid. Everybody has a pen. Look at yourself. Anything. It will use anything in the story so it can confirm the shame. So here I'm speaking a little bit about how it's being handled in clinical practice, but I'm not going to stay much more on this because I did journey more into it yesterday, so I don't want to repeat myself a lot. But we're looking at the shame also that comes for people in how they're being met in the clinical practice, in the hospital, let's say, environment, when they are expressing suicidal ideation, because the main, as we all know, that the main safety prevention tool, let's say, if we can call it like that, in suicide, is getting people to speak. And in my work, I started in holding monthly groups of support for therapists, actually, in compassionate inquiry. And I was working before with groups also, for the people that were experiencing themselves any sort of suicidal ideation. And the first thing, when they would come in, they said, first of all, hey, I don't like this word prevention. I didn't want to come because for months I wanted to come, but it's called suicide prevention group. And this goes against what my experience is right now. My experience is that I'm thinking of taking my life. And I would like to come to a place where maybe others have this experience, but I don't want to come for you to make me wrong, to prevent me, to come in the space and say this is wrong, what you want to do, what you think is best for you, and to put that block. So that's why we shifted, and it's important to shift that kind of, doesn't matter if the language, for me it's important the language also, and that's why I called it suicide attention, because attention is the language of love and speaks of valuing and validating someone's experience. That's how we know as kids that we're loved, right? We get attention. So a suicidal person needs attention. And not prevention, which says, I know what is best for you, and how they're being met. And then the second question after prevention, they said, so, but will you report me if I say this? Will you tell my mentor, my teacher, my supervisor? That was the first thing. They were so much in fear of being punished. Because the truth is that as hard, as big as a word that is, suicidal distress worldwide is still punished like a criminal act. We also say, look in the language, he committed suicide, which is very important to reframe towards he died by suicide. Because commit in English, you commit a crime. And when we say that, unwillingly, of course, we are adding to the stigma, but let's look at the source of that. He's committing either an illegal act, how I heard about India, or an act against God, how it is in my country. So in my country, it's still seen by the church as this capital sin, and the person that will take their life will not be buried or received in the church. The family has to deal with it, and then the family will not be received in the church. So imagine the shame. This is still happening now. So people don't speak, absolutely, and the deaths by suicide are called, I don't know, heart attack. Yeah. So I think it's similar in some aspects to what was happening here. So looking, if we talk about societal shame, we look at that also. And also, how are they being met? So many people, for example, me, that I was sharing yesterday, when I had one of my attempts, I was in therapy with this amazing psychologist and psychiatrist from Romania, a big professor. And I said yesterday he knew nothing about my ideation, so it was not his fault, he couldn't do anything, he didn't know. And why didn't he know? Because I was afraid that he will send me to the hospital. And this is what people are afraid of, that therapists will call emergency services very soon, because it's a fear-based kind of response from therapists. And a lot of therapists, then it happens also in clinical practice. I'm sure, this is not recognizable here because we are all people wanting to work with this. But in the general field, I have colleagues that will not work with someone experiencing suicidal, that says that they have active plans. Even in passive, they're a bit, and they're sending them to me. But they're saying, I'm not working with this, I'm afraid, I'm sorry, I cannot be in this state every single day. And that's that constricted state. And how is that for a person to be able to maybe open up for the first time, to have that trust to their therapist, and their therapist will say, hey, I'm sorry, I cannot help you anymore. This is too much for me. Imagine then the shame and the disconnection. And as I was saying, right, that is shame. It's disconnection. It's someone, an attachment figure, a safety figure broke the connection with us. So, of course, we want to, but we know this, welcome and understand and really integrate, come with that curiosity towards that experience. Okay, so understanding shame. I was saying that it's very much about these statements that speak to the core, to our identity, and that it is linked to these unmet needs. But what happens with these unmet needs, because we still have them? For example, many of my clients, and that happened to me in my history also, one of the triggers for a suicidal crisis was the fact that they wanted to reach out to friends, but they just couldn't. They had shame. And again, I very much recognize that experience. But that is a basic human need, to connect. They were making that human need wrong. Why? Because at one point in their childhood, they understood that that need is wrong. That if they will ask for connection in any way, maybe they will be needy. Why? Because the parents didn't have the resources to be there for them. So that's the imprint and the programming. And as adults, they will not reach out, but they will need that connection. And that's this, we call it this keeping a ball underwater kind of energy. I'm pushing down my needs that will keep on surfacing like a ball, because I need to live, and connection is necessary for living. Safety is necessary. So many other aspects and needs, being able to choose my own roles in society, not being constricted and pressured to do something that I did not choose. Again, these are basic human needs. But if we are in a society that normalizes them, I'm going to keep on pushing down and they will keep on coming up. And that's where there is this clash between one part of me and another. And in this clash, usually addictions or suicide happens, or self-harm, because it's this continuous pressure inside the individual. So John Bradshaw, in the book The Shame That Binds Us, if you didn't read it, I highly, highly recommend it, and it will be in the references, also talks about this all-pervasive sense that I'm flawed and defective as a human being. So let that sink in, if we can connect flawed and defective as a human being. And the all-pervasive sense, this is again what shame is saying. It's all the time. If I am flawed, it's not that I'm flawed now. I am always flawed, right? So this is another tool that we can work with. Being able to put in a temporary sort of box the experience of the person, to place it in a moment in time, and to fight against in some way, to bring transparency to these perceptions of always. This is always like this. And Gabor Mate, and this is very much what we can use in the work with shame. We're looking at the difference between, and maybe many of you know, between authenticity and attachment, right? And who did we have to be in order to get our needs met? That's what attachment means. I had to be the good child. I had to be the one that is always the first in class. And that's a lot of pressure. And that's how you will get love. As an example, I had to be the quiet kid in the house because maybe other kids were very turbulent. So I had to be the nice kid and the cooperative kid. And so on. We're going to look at many identities. And that's attachment. It's practically how we developed our personality as an adaptation. Personality is an adaptation to adverse childhood experiences, actually. It's how we coped. It's how we adapted. But we identify with it and we say, I am this, I am the professional, I am the smart person, I am the this. And that's not who we are, and that is becoming a cage that will suffocate us. And it will instill the shame once we do not prove our identity with the smallest thing, right? So we see, and what is authenticity is is letting go of these traits and letting go of these personality constructs and being able to voice your needs and being able to say, hey, this is actually not okay for me. You are too close to me. You are in my space. So actually, I don't want to do this exercise, or I don't want to do this. That's authenticity. But attachment will say, I cannot do that because I'm going to offend someone. Right? And keeping on, and there's shame. That's shame. And if we keep on choosing that attachment over authenticity, we suppress our nature, we suppress ourselves. And what Gabor beautifully says is, whatever survives is just a fragment of the true self. So we actually really lose the self in choosing authenticity. And this is, it can be a beautiful exercise, a self-reflection, let's say, question for us all. Where in your life do you not say no? To what in your life do you not say no? And what is your story when you don't say no? Maybe you take on, I take on many clients. I'm a workaholic. And I take and I take and I take. What is my story? Why don't I say no? Because I would feel so much, because I feel shame, because how can I refuse the help to another person? Because that means that I don't have a right to be here. That's my story. So what is our story in not saying no? Because that is what kills us, the continuous not saying no, right? And on the other hand, what would we like to say yes to in life that we don't have? What are the qualities? Because suicide brings that also. When we look, what is its purpose? What is the relief that I project I will find in the suicide? And it's very much about shame. Going away from shame and coming in my true self. I want freedom, maybe. I want peace of mind. I want lack of pressure. It's not lack of pain. People can deal with pain. People are very resilient and strong, but it's about the perception of being either trapped or powerless or worthless or hopeless. And these are all perceptions coming from shame. So there we can also see, that's what I was saying, what can we say yes to? How can we find those qualities in life and not in death? Where do I find the peace in life? Where do I find the freedom in life? And that's where it's beyond the attachments. It's beyond identifying myself with these personality traits. So before doing this, I would like to stop a little bit here and invite you into another exercise if you'd like. There are some balls on the table, and there are a lot of pieces of paper and pens. Now, if you'd like, this will be all anonymous, so as we are mostly all in the healing professions or therapists, so we are people that did their own work on themselves. We are familiar with some of our limiting beliefs. And they show up still, if we're honest with ourselves. Again, they show up in the present moment in different situations. So if you would connect and you would think, what is your main limiting belief about yourself that you're still holding? Yeah. There can be very diverse. If you'd like to write, it's just a short sentence. I am what? It's a belief, so it starts with I am. Maybe that stops you from showing up authentically in life with yourself. Maybe that stops you from saying no. Or from harming yourself through some way, from working, overworking, or pleasing others. And if you did that, once you're done, I will leave a minute for people to maybe connect to this. You can put the notes in the bowl, and we want to just mix them up. Yeah. And if you'd like, if you're ready, I still see people in the back having the papers. You can put them, as I said, in the bowls, and really we want to mix them up, and at a point just draw one note of that. The microphone? Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So a disclaimer that I was told now, and just to be aware of, these sessions are recorded. So if you share, just know that they will be recorded, and just share if you feel comfortable to know that. Yeah.
Only if you're comfortable, you can share. Otherwise, these sessions are recorded. Yeah?
If we're speaking about shame. Maybe. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So if you'd like to just mix up the notes, and whoever wants to, just we can pick up from a table. It would be great to hear from each table just some of those beliefs. Let's see. And you can read them out loud. You can read them out loud. It would be wonderful if we would have a microphone to just, or you can just scream them.
Should we read all of it?
Sorry?
Should we read all of it?
No, you can just pick one. You can pick one. We don't want to hear all of them. We just want to get a taste of some of the beliefs running in the room. Yeah?
I am afraid.
I am afraid?
Yeah.
Okay, great. That is not a belief. I am afraid. That is an emotion. I have fear. Yeah?
Okay.
So just to make that distinction, and we're going to look at that a little bit, because people say, I feel weak, or I feel abandoned, or I feel... Those are not feelings. Those are perceptions. It doesn't mean that they might not be valid, but they're perceptions, they're interpretations of the mind. I perceive myself as powerless in this situation, or as worthless. And that's where we dig to the core belief. And this is all shame work. This is what is the core belief. If I believe, for example, I am powerless, what is the core belief? What kind of person is powerless? I am weak, or I am broken, or I am something along. And that's the belief. I am afraid is very valuable, but it's an emotional reality. Yeah. It's not a mind reality. The beliefs are a mind reality. Yeah? So we want to look for limiting beliefs. What does our mind say?
I'm a failure. I'm needy.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so I'm a failure. I'm needy. I'm too much. Okay. Yeah, others?
I'm scared of my own power.
I am scared of my own power. That's interesting. That's interesting, but let's dig deeper. That's still not a belief. It's an experience that you might have.
Can we see this as a belief? I am the reason for the mishaps.
For the mishaps?
Yeah.
Yeah, I will come back to that just to finish here. I will come back, absolutely. So I'm afraid of my own power. Yeah? Okay, so a client comes in with this. How come you're afraid of your own power? What is the story there? Could you tell a little bit? Why are you? I'm curious. So why would someone be afraid of their own power?
Maybe the attention on you, maybe the focus on you.
Okay, so then the attention is on me, the focus is on me. Okay, so then what? What's the problem?
You're worried about the impact on the other person. You don't like the spotlight because it will show the flaws.
So I'm worried about the impact on another. That's an interesting line. Why? If I'm worried about my impact on another, what does that mean? What do I believe? I'm dangerous. There we have the belief. I'm dangerous. Or there's something wrong with me, or I'm toxic, or I'm a fraud. Yeah? And that's where the self-disgust is coming in again, because someone was mentioning in the panel with the shame, the self-disgust. The disgust comes there. We have disgust towards something that is poisonous or toxic, right? That's how it develops. Disgust is very necessary as kids, because otherwise we eat something that is poisonous. So disgust is, and yeah, if I have disgust around my own person, I see myself as toxic. Yeah. And that's a very hard reality to hold, I believe. Okay, you were asking?
I had a chit in this saying, I am the reason for mishaps.
Oh, yeah, great. I am the reason for mishaps. Great. That leads us right to the belief. What kind of person is the reason for mishaps? Inconsiderate, clumsy, stupid. What? Unlucky, unfortunate.
The one who is feeling worthless.
Worthless.
Yeah.
Yes, all of these are beliefs. You see? And those are the stories that these beliefs are creating. We can imagine that it's like a pyramid with the point down. The point down is the belief. And the belief is an internalized reality from childhood. The belief is not from the present moment. So we can see the shame part as a very young part inside of us. It feels like it's now. It feels like me, the professional adult, has shame around whatever. But it's not that. It's the young part that holds a belief. The belief, like in the pyramid, will open up and we'll have to create a story. And that's what we heard now. What's the story? I'm at fault for all the mishaps. I'm afraid of my power. I do this. Yeah.
No matter how much I try, I end up offending others.
Great. No matter how much I try, I end up offending others. You see? Another story. So we have the shame, right? The state of shame. It becomes a trait. It produces a story. That's the narrative, right? And you see how disconnecting all of these are. Because shame is an emotion that leads us to disconnection. Again, disconnection leads to suicide. Yeah? So we can also look at the emotions coming back. I saw you. Yeah. So what kind of person? Tell me again your story there. What you read. What you read. Read it again. Yeah.
Actually, I said it.
Oh, okay. Say it again just to...
No matter how much I try, I end up offending others.
Okay, so how are you? What kind of person ends up offending others however much they try?
Thoughtless, rude, inconsiderate.
Rude, insensitive, bad, a jerk, underperforming, irresponsible. Beliefs. These are all beliefs. Again, they didn't come from the present moment, and this is liberating. This is the trauma work, and this is liberating for the client and for ourselves to see. It feels like it's now. It's not from now, because if we go further, I would ask, so when is the first time where, and we know this kind of line, we're all trained in it in different modalities, but when did this belief, and now we're going to another step, when did this serve you in your life? Because they sound horrible, they feel horrible, but there are some old friends that were there with us and helped us either adapt or survive. Shame is Janina Fisher with her work in parts work and structural dissociation. Highly recommend her work if you're not familiar with it. She calls shame the quiet little hero. What did that mean? When did it serve me, the shame? Well, maybe I grew up in an abusive household. And maybe believing that I'm stupid and worthless and rude made me hold my head down and have shame and hide. That's what shame wants, hide. And maybe that was life-saving. Because if I would have stood up for myself and said, no, I'm a valuable human being, this is not okay, I might have had way more violence. So you see, that's the quiet little hero. That's how shame works for us. And if we see it as that, also as a relational approach inside of us, because when shame comes, I'm like, oh, I don't want to. But if we welcome it and we see, when did you serve me to think that I am too much? Right? For me, it was I am too much. Because I had a lot of emotional, due to trauma, a lot of emotional reactivity, let's say, as a kid, but nobody was there. So I was holding it myself. So I couldn't hold it myself as a kid, right? So either I would have collapsed completely, or I had to understand I am too much, so shut up. Keep it inside. And that's how it protected me, as an example. And all these beliefs, if you look at them, we can see how might this have served you. And this is how we can help our clients that are in the shame state. You see, how does this feel if we can connect to it like this? That it's not, again, this self-defeating story. It's not, again, the identity of who I am. It's not true. It's just a story of the mind that had to protect me at a point. Right? And now jumping back here, we see some of the core beliefs, and these are just some of them. But that's what we're looking at, core beliefs. So how do we work with that? We differentiate between the emotion. Shame is the emotion. Anger is the emotion. Sadness, despair. When I say I feel powerless, that's, again, not a feeling. That's the perception. Right? So we want to distinguish between the emotions and the perceptions of a person. And then when we found the perception, we can ask, so what kind of person is this, whatever story you have? And there we get the core belief. And there we see the functionality. When did it appear? How did it defend you? Right? This is just like a very short and fast way to kind of deal with these steps in practice. One possibility. And it's important to see and to be aware of some of these beliefs, because suicidal people, many of them will not say they are suicidal. Also, they will not necessarily be aware of their core beliefs. If we will ask them, so you think you're worthless? Many will say, no, I don't think I'm worthless. But if we inquire into the story, oh my God, I actually do think I'm worthless. Or a part of me thinks I'm worthless. And that's what we want to get, because that's the driver for suicidality. That's where it comes from, right? So we want to get to the source. So here we hear it, we can hear the suicidality in the story. Right? I'm always so much, and my friends, and I went to work and nobody talked to me. So what do I believe? I'm a burden, I'm worthless, I'm this, I'm that. So we look at these language cues, and once we get them, these are some possible tools. How do we work with them? For example, and I wanted to give just some examples. Things can't get better and I'm helpless. Yeah, it's kind of a common one in suicide. So we want to explore, as I was saying, the perceptions. Again, the accent is on the word perception. This is not a reality. You have choice at any point. For example, I have clients that say, yeah, I'm overwhelmed, I have to be with my kids and take care of my ill mother, and I have to work 3 jobs. And it does sound to me as a therapist also like, my God, yeah, this is horrible. You're powerless. And they say, I'm powerless, I have no choice, I have to. But if we look deeper, is it really that you have no choice? Kids are abandoned all the time. You can just leave. You can abandon your mother. You can take a plane and go to another country. Does anybody stop you? And then they say, yeah, but I couldn't do that to my kids and to my mother. Okay, then that's choice. That's choice. So you don't want to abandon your kids. Why? Because you have some values. You want to take care of your mother. Why? Because you have some values. And you see how we shift from this perception of hopeless. It's trapped. I'm trapped. I'm trapped, yeah, I will kill myself. What can I do? Because it's way too much. But if we can connect to empowerment and choice, no, this is based on my values and I choose this. And it's applicable to mostly anything, except very extreme cases that are more rare. It applies to everything. So we want to hold that in relationship and to reestablish connection. Again, shame is, the medicine for shame is that connection and getting the person to express it. What I was saying earlier, I can never stop feeling this pain. Again, I chose some of the main beliefs in suicidality, and they show up as this or a bit in a different language, but that's what we want to get at. They are definitive statements. Never, always. Yeah, here what we can do practically is really, it's called titration, or we can really see the micro moments when maybe they were not, exactly as someone said yesterday, maybe they were not feeling exactly that pain. Maybe walking to my office today, there was a bird and the bird sang. And for 1 second, my pain was a bit lower. So then that's not true. You can never stop feeling this pain. That's not true. And we can work with that in practice in the present moment when we engage the client and when we see them maybe getting out of that collapsed nervous system state. We can, if we're very present, we can pinpoint it and stop there and pause and say, okay, how is the pain right now? I think it's a bit less. Great, so we have a way out. It's not always like that. And when we hear the always and the never, we know that they are in the young part, because they developed this belief as a child, and young kids don't have access. That emotional memory that gets encoded doesn't have access to the temporary lobe in the brain. So they cannot place it in time. It's always, it's never. And another tool that we can work with in trauma, for example, is to ask, and then what? It was horrible, it was like this, and then what? So that we can open and place them in a chronological way of thinking. And they see that specific trauma, because they can come with the perception, I have such big trauma that I have no way out, I'm hopeless, right? Something so horrible happened to me. Okay, and before that, and after that, and we want to break that illusion of those kind of tunnel vision, that that's all that happened to me, that's all I am, right? So look for the never and the always. Again, some of these are just offerings. I'm sure with the expertise in the room, with the different backgrounds, you can have your own tools to work with them, but they're just possibilities if at a point they resonate. The only way to get better is to die, another definitive one. Is that true? Were they never a bit better? Because if they were never a bit better, let's just remember that they would not be in our office today. So the fact that they are in our office today is a proof of resilience, and that at a point it was better. So that is just not true. So we want to not, of course we don't want to make them wrong and say, yeah, this is bullshit, no. But we want to gently, compassionately open that conversation and inquire into moments in the past when maybe there was a bit of relief. And if we can take anything from those qualities and recreate them in the present, because the resilience and the resources are within us. Nothing in us, not the most severe trauma, will affect our essence. Our true self cannot be touched, only our personality. So the wounds are coming from attachments and personality and beliefs, but not the most severe trauma can take away my essence and who I am as a human being. And that's where we can also remember that in front of the most terrible stories. Just remember that with our clients, that if they are here today, there is still some access to their true self. And that's all we need, right? You see, otherwise, there is no hope, no one will ever love me the way I am. This is where I wanted to offer, if you're not familiar with it, of course you're familiar with the idea of protective factors, but you can look at the end of the presentation, there is a reference to the resilience score questionnaire. You can look on it online also. I hope I included it. This is something very interesting to look at, and also for yourselves, and we can offer it to our clients, just to see what could be some of our protective factors in our life, or what could some of theirs be. Because, for example, I have a client that says he's completely alone, he has these perceptions of worthlessness, he's ugly, he's stupid, he's everything. Doesn't have a relationship, doesn't have friends. So he always has this belief, no one will love me the way I am. But when we inquired and I asked, okay, let's go deeper into your life, there were two things. When he comes home, he has a dog, and the dog is extremely happy to see him and wagging his tail. And he sits down and we inquired, and what's happening there? And yeah, I sit down with the dog, and the dog really loves me. Why? Why does the dog love you? It's not just for food, it's something else, right? And then he remembered a neighbor. Actually, a neighbor was the biggest protective factor. A neighbor when he was a kid, because he came from a very abusive and alcoholic father, and that's why he developed those beliefs. But when he was getting out of the house where his father kept on telling him, you're worthless, you're going to do nothing with your life, nobody wants you, there was a neighbor that would smile very much at him, and he would be very happy to see him, and they exchanged some words. And there I could find a little bit of opening and ask, why do you think? Why do you imagine that neighbor might have smiled every day when he saw you? Yeah, I was a playful kid and I had a lot of humor. So is that true that no one will love you being playful and having a lot of humor? Those are still within you. So you see, this is a little bit of a way that we can work with some of these beliefs that are full of shame. Of course, the burdensomeness that we know, that is a big indicator of suicidality, the sense of being a burden. I'm always a burden, everything I do. Powerlessness. There we can inquire into the other friend. I'm sure you know with this, but would you ever tell a friend, yeah, well, instead of calling me, I prefer to attend your funeral. Just kill yourself. And no one probably will respond yes. So why would that be different with you? Why is it the double standard, right? And I use that, I can ask about a stranger, if a stranger will reach out to you in this way, for example. And even to a stranger, everybody says, no, of course, I will be there for them. It's not a burden. So 7 billion people are not a burden, but there is one that is a burden, which is you. So there we can crack that logic a little bit. And it's, yeah, maybe it doesn't really stick. Yeah. Okay, let's see, I want to be sure that I have some time. Yes. So I'm going to propose another exercise, because this is mostly what I've been talking about. If you'd like to do a little bit of a practice exercise in pairs. So what we will do, we want to journey a little bit into the experience of shame more than we did now. So I would ask you, if you like, to think of a story in your life as recent as possible, that a trigger that brought shame for you. It can be anything. If you can, don't choose something huge, because the shame is the same. If we choose something dramatic and huge, or I dropped my mic on the floor, it's still the same shame. So choose a story of that, and while you tell the story, building up on Sandy's exercise from yesterday with active listening, we practice that active listening, but more than that, we want to name the shame. Dan Siegel is talking about name it to tame it. Right? So we want to name the shame, notice the shame, bring that kind of mindful attention, and in connection together share how that experience is. So one person shares their story of shame and their beliefs, and I was stupid that I did that, and I felt ashamed, and they notice what's happening, and when they finish, they share. Yeah, so now that I said I have this lump in my throat and my hands are sweaty and I feel it's hard for me to look at you, for example. And the listener, if something is happening within the listener, you can also share. Yeah, my stomach was in a knot also, or I'm open towards this, or whatever the experience is. We want to see physically, as much as possible, as detailed as possible, what's happening physically to us when we say the story of shame. Yeah, is it possible? Would you like to? So again, you can do that whoever wants to. We don't need to do everyone. And then we switch. And there will be a follow-up. So it's just a bit of an encouragement to do it, because then there will be a follow-up to this exercise, which is a reframe. And it's seeing a bit about those beliefs. So let's try to, I don't know, take around 5 minutes maybe per person. Yeah, we can go in a 10-minute kind of sharing.
Yes.